Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to all of the witnesses for the work that you've done here today and for your insights. We appreciate all of your time and your help here today. I want to ask Mr. Pomerleau a question, if I may. Mr. Pomerleau, do you think that state and local governments are an important part of the national economy?
Yeah, state and local governments are they are important employers, and there are a lot of people currently employed there.
And there, I think the number is about 20 million people are employed in state and local governments. Is that correct?
That seems about right.
And there have been about 1.5 million people that have been laid off or furloughed from state and local governments during this recession, which is double the amount of people that have been laid off or furloughed during the quote unquote Great Recession.
Yeah, the layoffs have hit people that both work for the private and public sector.
Do you think that the federal government has a role in helping to help these state and local governments?
Yeah, so the way I see it is that state governments, in contrast to the federal government, they really can't borrow in the same way. They're restricted by balanced budget amendments. So when revenue goes down because the economy goes down, then governments are going to have, state and local governments need to tighten their belt, and that can lead to layoffs, and that can lead to people unexpectedly losing their job. I know that there's concern about pension bailouts and things like that, but I think the very limited lawmakers at the federal level should look at what state and local governments are losing in revenue.
So we need the federal government to help the state and local governments. You'd agree with that, right?
I think that there is a place for that.
We don't want local governments to raise taxes, state and local governments to raise taxes.
Correct. One of the options, one of the downsides is
we don't want them to raise taxes, and we certainly don't want them to continue to lay off employees, correct?
Correct.
So the only choices for state and local governments with these massive deficits they're facing, which is projected by the Center for Budget and Policy Priorities to be $615 billion, the only thing they can do is either raise taxes or fire more employees, both of which you think are bad ideas, or get help from the federal government. And I think you would agree with the statements of Governor Hogan, a Republican, and Governor Cuomo, a Democrat, the chair and vice chair of the Governors Association. Quote, each day that Congress fails to act, states are being forced to make cuts that will devastate the essential services the American people rely on and to destroy the economic recovery before it even gets off the ground. I think you'd agree with that statement generally, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I think that as revenue declines for states, states will have to react by reducing spending.
And the Republican president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors says, quote, my message today is straightforward and urgent. American cities are still being devastated by this pandemic, and it's imperative that Congress and the administration take swift action before the beginning of the next fiscal year, which for many cities is July 1st. That's from Mayor Barnett, the president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors. So, Mr. Pomerantz, you are the quote-unquote Republican witness here today, but you are agreeing that our state and local governments need assistance, and they need it urgently. Otherwise, they're going to be forced to either raise taxes, which we don't want them to do and is unlikely, or two, continue to further erode the national economy by firing employees. And who's going to be affected by that? The people that are going to be affected are our schools, for example. 47% of the funding of schools in the United States of America is provided by state governments, and the states are devastated right now. The rest of the money that states provide, the biggest percentages, are for health and human services. And then the next biggest percentage after that is for public safety. So I would urge you, please, Mr. Pomerleau, any influence that you have on my Republican colleagues, to please encourage them that it's essential for our nation to recover from this recession affected by this pandemic is for us to fund quickly our state and local governments. And when Mitch McConnell says this is a blue state bailout and states and local governments should file for bankruptcy, it is really the height of hypocrisy when in fact his state every year receives subsidies from the federal governments from states like mine, the state of New York, which right now is devastated because we have 3 of the 6 hardest hit counties in the United States of America, in my congressional district alone, that have been affected by this pandemic. So thank you, Mr. Pomerleau, for your cooperation. I appreciate it very much. Thank you to all the witnesses. Thank you to my colleagues. And thank you so much to the chairman and ranking member for their assistance. And I yield back.